their very best life. Sonja Evans also provides one-on-one energy sessions through ITA, Infinite Timeline Adjustment, to assist her clients in connecting to their optimal timeline and clearing energetic pathways to manifest their true heart's desires with ease and grace, utilizing infinite healing to clear ancestral, subconscious, genetic, and collective morphic fields that create dissonance. She has also done a collection of audios that target specific belief patterns and lack. Her passion to assist others in the fulfillment of their divine missions, divine birthright abundance, peace, joy, and love. She is also an accomplished belly dancer and nature photographer. So if you are here, Sonja, I want to welcome you to the show.
Hi, Rich. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you so much for having me on. And hello, everybody. It's a blessing to be here with you, and I hope you're having a great weekend. I know that I am.
Thank you, Sonja.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here. Well, Sonja,
so excited.
Can you tell us a little about yourself and your own awakening?
Absolutely. I was born in Boston. I was raised in Boston, and my family was very dysfunctional, which seems to be the case and the norm with a lot of healers and light workers. We're born into these lineages so that we can take on these patterns, so that we can transform them. And my father especially was emotionally abusive with me. It was very hard to please him. It seems like I was pretty much ignored unless I was doing something wrong. And to make matters worse, I was also bullied quite a bit growing up. And I was a sensitive child. I was always an empath. And, of course, growing up, I had no idea what this was. So I was, taking all of this energy in and taking it on, and didn't know what to do with it. And it created a lot of confusion for me growing up. But I do remember there being these times at night laying in bed when I would feel this love, like this warmth in my heart. And inside I would hear, not audibly, but it would be a voice inside that said, "We are with you. We love you. We're going to get you through this." And looking back on it now, I know that that was, my angelic team, my star family, just reassuring me that, that they were with me and that this was all happening for a reason, and this was all going to come together and make sense someday. So taking on all of these patterns from the family, and basically a lot of times starseeds, indigos, light workers, they're born into these families and they take on these patterns. And what happened with me as a teenager is that I took these patterns and sort of reflected them back at the family, which, manifested as a lot of dysfunctional behavior. I was a very rebellious child. This was during the crazy 80s. So, it was, pretty wild times, and just so much confusion, and just having no sense of who I was, because I was absorbing all of these energies and taking them on and owning them. From the people and my family and the situations around me, and, just trying to process that. I think the turnaround for me really began, when I was in my early 20s. I did end up becoming a Christian. I was involved in fundamentalist religion for several years. And looking back on it now, I'm very thankful for that time in my life. And I realize, and a lot of light workers do come through the channel of Christianity, and it's because we so resonate with the Christ consciousness and the message of Yeshua, even though it has been tainted and sort of convoluted so that the real message has lost a lot of its power. But looking back on it now, I do see that had to be a step in my journey so that I could get grounded in that message. And after a while, I did find myself doubting and questioning and not sure how, God could be so limited. And, this was also made a little bit more complicated by sighting light ships. My star family was appearing to me in the sky and, not really having any answers because, that wasn't in the Bible. So, it was just sort of confusing for me. And it came to a point where I really felt like I had to leave that religion and I had to start searching. And so my journey really began, and I started, reading all of the books that I could find. A friend of mine, I was going through a lot of stuff, and the very first book that she handed me was Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life. And I just sort of ate it all up, and this whole understanding of how belief creates our reality and how we can change and shift our lives by changing our beliefs. So, I just sort of voraciously took in everything and reading Louise Hay and Shakti Gawain and Wayne Dwyer and just anything I could get my hands on. And, what was sort of happening, parallel while I was doing all of this reading and searching is that, my life really just started to fall apart. I mean, things were pretty good for a while, and then, jobs started to disappear and money started to disappear. And, this really got me searching, and the universe put some really wonderful energy healers into my path that I studied with. And, I studied and just sort of, dug into everything that I could get my hands on to just sort of have some understanding and to clear and to help understand why I was going through so much and why it was so hard. And I think this all came to a head when I became homeless. And luckily, a very good neighbor, a friend of mine, he took my daughter and I in. And it was a very confusing time for me because I had done so much inner work and I had done so much working on myself and couldn't imagine why I was where I was still. And, I remember taking a walk at the pond that was close to where I was living. And, I was just sort of having a gloom fest and, feeling sorry for myself. And, I sat upon a rock by the pond and, it's sort of like the skies parted. And I just knew in my heart that the reason why I was where I was is that there was still so much stuff just so deep within that I hadn't dealt with that was sort of creating an energetic barrier to what I did want. And once I started to see that and work with that and, the universe downloaded these tools for me to work with and started to clear that, I started to have that shift. And now I use that to help and assist others in their path and in their journey. But it has been, quite a journey, and it's still, just such a magnificent journey that's still unfolding for me.
Well, Sonja, we're looking forward to hearing more about it. We have a caller from Central Illinois. Hello, Central Illinois.
Hi, Rich.
How are you this evening?
I'm just fine. I have a question. I was just kind of curious. You said that you at one point you were homeless and you did a lot of reading and studying, and it sounds like a lot of physical stuff. Did you work at all during this period?
At the time, I wasn't working, and I was self-employed. I was teaching dance at the time, and really hard time finding work, and it was very frustrating. And on the one hand, I knew I had to do something, but I was applying for work, and things just weren't clicking for me. And it was like, okay, universe, I need to live. I mean, what's going on here? But the thing is, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later, it was a huge issue around receptivity, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that came up for me as an issue. And it's actually something that a lot of people are struggling with, that ability to receive love and to receive good. And, that was sort of kind of getting in the way with what I needed to not be in that situation. But I did have to experience it. And through it, I got to learn a lot about myself and about what was really down in the vaults in my subconscious. So I'm very thankful for the experience now. But at the time, no, I wasn't working and was very, very hard finding work. It was crazy.
I see.
Sonja?
Yes.
Taking off from that, can you talk a little about abundance and why so many people are not experiencing their life's purpose and their true heart's desires?
Well, abundance is, usually when we think abundance, we think money. And, abundance does include that, but abundance is a little bit more expansive than that, and that it encompasses just living in the fullness of joy. At the root, at the core of our beings, we are divine beings. We are love at the center of our beings, underneath all the illusions, all the stories that we take on and we believe about ourselves. But, it's a matter of bringing that out into our lives as, joy, as peace, as love, as creativity, and living in the fullness of that. And I think just in my own life and in working with clients, that the reason why so many people are not living their life purpose and their true heart's desires, it's many folds. There's many different aspects to this, but I find for the most part that a lot of people are sort of connected to this belief that, that they have to live a certain life in order to survive here. You have to go to school, you get a job, you get your 9 to 5, the house, the picket fence, and all of this, and then we sort of get locked into that and into this survival mentality and living from the root chakra, and we become afraid to take risks. I think a lot of times it's just fear. Another thing I was just mentioning with the wonderful caller that just called in a few minutes ago is receptivity. A lot of times we're sort of outfitted with these programs of guilt and shame, and they come in through different channels that I'll get into a little bit later. And these set up what I call interfering wave patterns, where we cannot sync up with the frequencies of joy and abundance because we have this stuff that's running in the background. It's sort of like a computer where you have, programs that are running in your computer, and, you can't get to what you want because you have this virus sitting in there. And that also can, block our ability to receive our abundance. A lot of it is family stuff and genetic stuff, ancestral stuff that's handed down to us through our genetics. And I always tell my clients when I'm dealing with an abundance issue that, just examine your parents and their attitudes about money, and what did they say about money, and what are the types of things that you learned from them and their experience, because those experiences that we get in our early childhood are so strong and they stay with us so strongly. I know with my own father, one of the things that he always said over and over is that you live, you work, you die. And, with all respect to him, when he did retire, he died within 2 years. And, it's because, we get these beliefs and they start, running and sort of creating on autopilot. They start, we just start operating out of them without even realizing it. And they can get into our consciousness, very sneakily if we're not living consciously and being aware and being present. And I think that those are some of the reasons. Sometimes it's karmic. A lot of people have taken oaths in past lives, oaths of poverty, oaths of self-denial if they were in a monastery or a monk in another life, nuns, vows that we take as nuns that sort of block our abundance. And these things all get trapped into our field and into our energy field. And even though we may want to experience joy and abundance, and we have this vision for this healing ministry, or we have a vision for a business or something that we want to step out on, there's always this thing, this mysterious thing that we can never quite get our fingers on, that just sort of block us and keep us, sort of in this hamster wheel of experiencing the same thing year after year and, month after month. And until we, get that out from the root, then we can open up those channels for that to start flowing to us with a little bit more grace and ease.
Well, speaking about years and changes, this is a very pivotal year politically in terms of the election. There's a lot of unrest public-wise concerning the election. Can you share with us, Sonja, about the significance of 2016 and how we can make the most of the year?
Absolutely. It never ceases to amaze me just how much we can learn about, the divine just by looking at, the microcosm of our world, and that this world seems to operate on cycles. I mean, we have the earth cycling around the sun every 12 months, and we have the cycles of night and day. We have the seasons. Even in our own physical bodies, women with their menstrual cycle. I mean, our lives just revolve around cycles, or divine cycles to everything. And I think the 60s group, the Byrds, put it the best when they have the song Turn, Turn, Turn. To everything there is a season. And it's no different with our years. And 2006 numerologically is a 9-year. And a 9 holds the vibration of completion. We're in the middle of a completion of a cycle that began in 2008, which was our last 1 year. So if you take a moment to sort of reflect on where you've been since 2008, sort the patterns that have come up, the stuff that's come up for you these past 8 years or so, you'll see what is being brought to completion this year and what the opportunities are this year. And, of course, we've had so much help with the upgrades that we've been receiving and the astrological alignments that we've been receiving to help us bring the stuff up to the surface so that it can be cleared, so that we can show up for what 2017 holds for us, which is the 1 year. Now, I mean, for me, myself, 2008, my father had died shortly before 2008. And these past several years, I've been dealing repeatedly, and this also goes back to the homelessness and the struggle with money. One thing that has been happening for me is, you know, with the emotional abuse and just never feeling good enough and never feeling like I could please him, as a lot of that stuff that was lodged in the consciousness field of my inner child started to come up and manifesting as these situations that were coming up for me to be cleared. And this was all focused around the divine masculine. I've done a lot of divine masculine clearing these past several years, and also meeting, you know, my twin flame these past several years too, and having him mirror a lot of that stuff coming up for me as well. So this year is very important, just, you know, globally and even personally in our personal lives, because there is a cycle that's wrapping up for us, and it's very individual for every person, because we're all, you know, all of our paths and all of our journeys are just so individualized. So, you know, if you think about the trends and the themes that you've seen happening since 2008 or so, you get an idea, you can glimpse an idea of what the potentials are for you. So it's really important this year to start getting a vision and set some goals for what you want to create in this next cycle, because, you know, things are wrapping up and we're having so much help, you know, from, you know, the astrological alignments and the other energies that are being downloaded on the planet. I know last year, energetically, I don't know about you, but it just like knocked my socks off with, you know, just the downloads that I was getting. And even recently, it's just been very intense. And this is all serving to help purge us and bring that stuff to the surface, all of that stuff that, you know, all of the old stories and the illusions that we bought into about who we really are and what we can accomplish and create. And that is coming to a close for us. So that's what makes this year so important. And that's why it's so important to sort of get a vision for what you would like to create next, what is in your heart to do next, what is the vision that, you know, your higher self has placed within you, and you know, really starting to reflect on that and meditate upon that as this year comes to a close. So, I mean, we're truly living in exciting times. There's just so much going on so many levels that it's just ridiculous.
Oh, absolutely. Reminds you of that Chinese blessing or curse, whichever way you want to interpret it. May we live in interesting times. We're definitely living in them.
Yes.
You talk about us each having our own individual destinies and purposes. Can you talk a little about timelines and why you feel working with them is the next step in our evolutionary growth and our evolution? Tell us about that.
Well, you know, Rich, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher, which came out maybe about 10 or 15 years ago. Now, for you, those of you who haven't seen the movie, Ashton Kutcher, in the movie, he played a character who had the ability to change his present by going back to certain choice points in his past and making different decisions. And then when he came back to the present, he would be in a completely different situation. And I love that movie, not because we can do that, not yet. I'm still waiting for that. That'll be great. But I love that movie because it just so touches on the truth that, you know, we definitely live in, you know, a fractal universe where there's just these infinite patterns and there's these infinite timelines and these infinite possibilities that we have, and the power is within us at each choice point. And when I say choice point, I mean there's always this moment of decision where we can choose a this or that. For example, let's just say for breakfast, you want to make, you know, some oatmeal. So when you choose to make that oatmeal, everything else that's in your refrigerator, be it eggs or cold cereal, whatever, you're choosing to go in this direction. And these other choices are unmanifested potentials or other timelines. There are other timelines that coexist with that where you did have the eggs or you did have the cold cereal. So in all things, the choices that we make determine which timeline that we end up on, and there are all these other timelines that contain the choices that we didn't make. So when we understand that, you know, the things that we desire to create for ourselves exist as an unmanifested potential, a potential timeline, we can move into alignment with the frequencies which are the doorway to crossing over into that timeline.